مدد يا رسول الله، مدد يا سادة أصحاب الرسول، مدد يا مشايخنا دستور ما شاء الله فاز أحسن شيخ محمد الحقاني، مدد أبو أيوب الأنصاري ومجاب الله الآخرة أمدونا بمددك مجاب الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألا لله الدين الخالص، صدق الله العظيم. Allah Azze ve Celle halis olan din, İslam dini. Allah
Almighty says that the religion of purity, the religion of sincerity is Islam.
Rızası için olan Allah Azze ve Celle'nin insanlara
Allah Almighty commands people to dedicate themselves to Him and to be sincerely for their Lord Allah Almighty.
bahşettiği, verdiği bu güzelliktir.
And Allah Almighty has granted Islam to humanity as a way to acquire sincerity and dedication to their Lord Allah Almighty, and this beauty and this grand and divine gift of Islam is a provision by Allah Almighty, and it is a beauty granted to people.
İnsanoğlu bunu kabul ederse her türlü hayra sahip olur.
If people accept this reality and live accordingly, they will be obtaining and acquiring all kinds of benefits.
İhlasla Allah Azze ve Celle iman edip
It is through sincerity, and it is with sincerity that we must believe in Allah Almighty.
Allah Azze ve Celle'nin emrettiği şeyleri yapan insan ihlaslı olur.
And those who are meticulous about fulfilling the orders and commands of Allah Almighty will be proving their sincerity, and they will have believed in and have faith in their Lord Allah Almighty with dedication and with sincerity.
İhlas büyük bir nimettir.
Sincerity is an enormous favor.
İhlası nasıl
And how can we obtain that great virtue of sincerity?
nasıl elde edilir ihlas?
How can we acquire that sincerity?
Her yapılan şey Allah Azze ve Celle'nin niyeti için.
By doing everything we do for the sake of Allah Almighty. To do everything we do for the sake of Allah Almighty is the means for us to acquire sincerity.
Allah Azze ve Celle'nin rızası için yapılan şeydir.
And everything we do, we shall do in order to obtain the pleasure and satisfaction of our Lord Allah Almighty. And if that is what drives our deeds, then we will be obtaining sincerity.
Bunu da bir mürşit olması lazım ki
And in order to dedicate oneself to one's Lord Allah Almighty and to seek the Lord's pleasure in all one's deeds, one is in need of a guide, of a murshid.
onu o yolda yürütmesi için
One needs to be taught how to live for the sake of Allah Almighty and how to do everything for the sake of Allah Almighty with sincerity.
o Allah rızasının yolu olan yol, onu kurtarmak için
One is in need of a leader to show one the way of salvation, which is the way of living and acting for the sake of Allah Almighty with the intention to obtain Allah Almighty's satisfaction.
mürşit lazımdır.
It is the murshid, that spiritual guide, who will show you the way of sincerity, of how to dedicate oneself and your deeds for the sake of obtaining Allah Almighty's satisfaction.
İhlaslı insanlar her şeyi Allah'tan bilir.
Those who sincerely believe in Allah Almighty believe that everything happens through the will of Allah Almighty,
Allah Azze ve Celle'ye tevekkül edip
And those who sincerely believe in Allah Almighty fully trust in Allah Almighty.
Büyük rahatlıkta olurlar.
And it is through that trust and through that dedication with their sincerity that they feel inner peace and inner rest.
Daha önce de söylemiştik, bir kısım evliya var. O evliyaların değişik halleri var, değişik usulleri var.
There are many awliya, and there are many various types of awliya, and there are many awliyas who have various states.
Bir kısım evliya var ki Allah Azze ve Celle'nin meşiyeti nasıl gidiyorsa ona müdahale etmezler.
And there are many awliyas who have different and distinguished types of characters, and there's one certain type or one group of awliya who are renowned for not interfering with anything Allah Almighty does. They know that everything happens through the will of Allah Almighty, and they do not interfere in the course of action of things in this world.
Kimse için dua etmezler. Kimse aleyhine bir şey demezler.
And they also do not make supplications, and they do not also speak ill of anyone, and they do not speak of anyone.
Sırf kendi hallerinde olurlar.
They fully focus on themselves only. They do not concern themselves about others.
Bu tabii bütün evliyalar değil.
Not every awliya is like this. This is a certain type of awliya.
Bir kısım evliyadır bunlar.
And there is a special group of the friends of Allah Almighty, the holy ones, the awliya, who have this type of character.
Dünya yıkılsa umutlarında değil.
Even if the entire world got destroyed, they would not care.
Hiç üzülmezler,
They would not be sad,
hiç sevmezler.
and they would not complain about anything at all.
Bunlar halis olan evliyalardır.
They are sincerely and purely for their sake of their Lord Allah Almighty, and they have fully dedicated themselves to the will of Allah Almighty, knowing that everything happens through Him.
Onlarda tabi bütün evliyalar olabilir ama öyle başka evliyaların vazifeleri var, yapacak vazifeleri var.
And as we said, there are different types of awliya who have different characters, and this is based on what their tasks are in this world. There are different awliya who have different tasks and who have to do certain things based on their divine command.
Bu kısım özel olan bir kısımdır.
But that group we speak about is a very special group, which is distinct from other awliya.
Bunlar dediğimiz gibi yansa, yaksa, yıkılsa, boğulsa, ne olursa olsun
They do not let themselves be influenced by anything at all, whether they are in fire, whether they are drowned, whether they are under ruins. They do not care. They are not interested in what happens around them.
hiç kalplerin, fikirlerin bir değişiklik olmaz.
There is no alteration, and there is no change of mood or thought within their hearts or within their minds.
O Allah Azze ve Celle'nin iradesi yürüyor, hasıl oluyor.
They have fully dedicated themselves to Allah Almighty, and they are in full compliance and in alignment with the will of Allah Almighty, and they have accepted that everything happens through the will of Allah Almighty, and thus they do not interfere with the course of action of things in this world.
Biz hiç karışmayız. Ona karışmamız bizim için olmaz diyor.
And they say, we do not interfere with anything, and we have no authority to interfere with anything, as everything happens through the will and command of Allah Almighty.
Fakat onlar çok fazla bir şey değil ama böyle bir kısım da var.
There are not many awliya like this, but again, this is to highlight that there is a group of such awliya.
Tabii biz insan olarak dua da yaparız.
We, however, as ordinary people, of course, we make supplications, we beseech our Lord Allah Almighty for certain matters.
Hayır da isterim.
We ask Allah Almighty for His blessings, for goodness,
Şerlerden de muhafaza olsun diye
and we ask Allah Almighty for protection from bad events or evil things.
yapmamız gene bize emirdir bazı insanlara.
And we do so as we are commanded and required by Allah Almighty. And these types of prayers and supplications are, even for a certain type of awliya, are commands of their Lord Allah Almighty.
Ama bazıları dediğimiz gibi onlar özel olarak, onları yani ibret olarak söylüyoruz ki onu da bilmesi lazım. Mümin ihlaslı olması için bunu da bilmesi lazım ki.
But again, we have mentioned that very special group of awliya who does not interfere with anything, not even through their prayers, because they are happy with the way things are and do not interfere with how things are, because they happen as Allah Almighty wills things to happen. And we mention that special group of awliya in order for us to be an example what it can mean to be sincere and to fully dedicate oneself to Allah Almighty, that one, even in his supplications, does not request any change, but is happy with how things are.
Böyle bir evliyalar var. Bu evliyalar hususi özel bir şeylerdir.
These awliyas who are like this are very special ones, and there are only a few who are like this with this specialty.
Bunlar onların işine karışan olursa, yani kalbinde bir şey olursa onların içinde çıkar. Sayıları azdır dediğimiz gibi.
And their number is limited. And if one of among them would want to change something, even if it was just the slightest thought in their hearts or in their minds, they would no longer belong to that very special group of awliya who do not interfere with anything, not even in their prayers.
Şimdi burada derler, üçler, beşler, yediler, kırklar falan, onlar
There are special types and groups of people. There are the Holy Three, there are the Holy Five, the Holy Seven, the Holy 40 awliya, and thus there are various distinct groups of awliya.
onlar da değişik.
And these and every single group of those awliya, they are special and distinguished in their own manner.
Ama bu dediğimiz daha değişik.
But that group of awliya which we have just mentioned is very distinct.
Ötekilerin vazifesi var.
The other groups, they have certain tasks within this world too.
Peygamber sallallahu aleyhi ve sellem diyorum, bihim tumtanun, bihim tumsanun, bihim turzakun diyor. Öteki evliyaların vazifeleri var. Onların yüzü suyu hürmetine.
The other awliyas, they have certain tasks for events to take place in this world too.
Yağmur gelir.
And it is our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, who describes those awliyas when he says that there are certain people that it is for their sake that Allah Almighty sends down rain.
Rızık verir.
It is for their sake Allah Almighty gives sustenance.
Zafere ulaşırlar.
And it is for their sake that Allah Almighty grants victory. Our beloved Prophet thus describes the awliya, the friends of Allah Almighty, the holy ones.
Ulaşılır. Onlarda vazifeleri öyledir.
And thus there are these certain and various types of awliya who are responsible for certain things to happen in this world, and there are these awliya who have these special tasks.
Onlar da onu yapacaklar.
And they are obliged and required by the divine order to fulfill their tasks.
Onun için bu ihlas meselesi doğru yoldan sapmamak lazım.
Sincerity requires one to not deviate or go astray from the right way.
Doğru yol olan Allah Azze ve Celle'nin yolu.
the right way, is the way of Allah Almighty.
Onu da inanmak lazım.
And this is what we must believe in.
Senin rızkın neyse sana gelecek.
And you must believe and trust in your Lord Allah Almighty with sincerity. And also when it comes to the matter of your sustenance, you must know that Allah Almighty has provided for you your sustenance and that your sustenance will reach you.
Çalışacaksın.
Of course, you should work for your sustenance.
Rızık Allah Azze ve Celle herkese bir değişik bir yoldan rızık vermiş.
Because Allah Almighty has created causes and means for everything in order to occur, and one must seek those means in order to obtain the sustenance, what Allah Almighty has destined for oneself.
Helalından rızık almaya bakmak lazım.
And when we seek the means in order to obtain our sustenance, we must make sure that we only resort to ways and manners that are halal.
Çalışan insan Allah Azze ve Celle ona yardım eder.
We must not perform prohibited actions, but must always make sure that what we do is halal, and then Allah Almighty will support us in our efforts.
Allah rızası için gene.
Again, everything we do must be for the sake of Allah Almighty, and thus our search for our sustenance must also be for the sake of Allah Almighty.
Talebi, ben bu rızkımı kazanıp çoluk çocuğu geçindireyim.
Oh my Lord, I seek your sustenance in order to take care of my children, of my family.
Onları iyi olarak yetiştireyim diye.
Oh my Lord, I seek your sustenance in order to raise my family children well.
Bakması lazım.
And it is with this intention one must seek one's sustenance.
Ya baktığı insanlar da iyi insanlar olsun diye ileride.
And one must seek the sustenance in a pure manner, so that those children who are then raised become good people themselves.
Onlar başkalarına, insanlığa faydalı olsunlar.
So that those children themselves will become good human beings themselves who contribute to society at large.
Faydalı insan o kimdir ki?
And who are good or beneficial people?
İmanlı insan.
A good person who has faith. A person who has faith is a good person.
İmanlı insanları yetiştirmek
Therefore, we must raise children with faith.
mühimdir.
And it is important to raise them with faith.
İmanlı olunca Allah'ın rızasına nail olmuş olur.
And if you show effort in order to raise your children, in order for them to be human beings with faith, then you will be obtaining Allah Almighty's satisfaction, and Allah Almighty will be pleased with you that you have raised your children this way.
Onun ihlas içinde çoğalır.
And then sincerity within yourself will increase.
Büyür. Allah'ın sevgili kullarından olur.
And as you thus do everything for the sake of Allah Almighty, and also make sure that your family and children shall be for the sake of Allah Almighty, Allah Almighty will increase your sincerity and make your sincerity grow and make you happier and happier.
Allah'ın evliyalarından olur.
And then you become a person who is loved by Allah Almighty. You become an awliya, somebody who is close and a friend of Allah Almighty.
Allah'ın evliyası illa keramet yapacak değil.
To be an awliya does not mean to perform extraordinary acts or to perform miracles.
En büyük keramet, ecel kerameti ve devam-ı tevfik. Devam iyilikte olmak.
The greatest miracle, in truth, is to be steadfast in performing good deeds.
En büyük keramettir bu.
To be steadfast and to continue and to be continuously performing good actions is the greatest of all miracles.
Herkes için insan nefsine mücadele ederse
one needs to struggle and fight one's ego.
bu keramet mertebesine yetişir.
And as you constantly fight against your ego in order to perform good actions and to please your Lord, you will reach that station of sainthood.
Daim hayırda, daim hayır işlerinde, ibadette,
Try to be always after good deeds, good actions, and to perform deeds of obedience of Allah Almighty.
iyilikte olan insan o en büyük kerameti nail olmuş olur.
A person who constantly does good things has shown proof of having performed the greatest of all miracles.
Allah'ın sevgili kullarından olmuş olur.
The one who is steadfast and constantly performs good deeds and never gives in, but is continuous in what he does in goodness, has become a servant who is dear and loved by Allah Almighty.
Onun için ihlas bir şey talep etmemek. Talep ettiğin bütün dünyalık da olsa onu ahiret için talep etmen lazım.
Sincerity means to only ask and seek Allah Almighty's pleasure and satisfaction, and even if it's about matters of this world, one should never seek one should never seek to do things for the sake of this world, but even if it's matter of this world, one should perform those things for the sake of Allah Almighty in the hereafter.
Ahirette mamur olsun diye dünyalık da lazımdır.
If you do things and one needs to do things in this world, then one should not do it for the sake of this world, but for the sake of the hereafter.
Yani o ihlaslım diye dünyayı da istemem demek dünyalık kalpte istemeyiz. Elde lazımdır.
To be sincere in one's faith does not necessarily mean to leave this world aside. What it means more precisely is to not let this world enter one's heart. One lives in this world and one cannot avoid this life, and thus one must live according to the circumstances, and it is okay to hold this world within one's hands, but one should not let this world enter one's heart. That is what it means to be sincere.
Peygamber sallallahu aleyhi ve sellem buyuruyor, kuvvetli Müslüman, zayıf Müslümandan daha hayırlıdır.
Because our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, says that a Muslim who is strong, also from a worldly perspective, is more beneficial than a Muslim who is weak.
Yani onu da ama dediğimiz gibi ihlas o para beni kuvvetlendiriyor. Ben parayla her şey yapıyorum diyor da para.
But one should not misinterpret these words and now strive only after worldly power in order to become more powerful just for the sake of this world. But sincerity means that this world and the power of this world is just a means to be a servant of Allah Almighty, and one should not make the power of this world to be one's goal or one's aim.
Allah rızası için, hayır hasenat için, kendine, ailene iyi bakmak için.
One should only seek worldly matters and worldly means in order to make one's Lord Allah Almighty pleased and to take care of one's family and to raise one's children well, and to contribute to society and to be beneficial to people. Those are the intentions one should have when seeking worldly matters, but one should not seek worldly power just for worldliness itself, but in order to please one's Lord.
Elinde gelen onu yapsın. Ama sırf para için olan insan ihlaslı değildir.
A person who seeks money for the sake of money or for the sake of power cannot be a sincere person.
Kalbinde para muhabbeti.
That person rather has the love of money in his heart.
Başka şey olmayan insan.
And when there's love of money in one's heart, then there's no place for something else or someone else.
Onun ihlası yoktur.
And then there is no sincerity in that person.
İnsanlar bu zamanın insanları ve hususen şaşırmış kalmışlar.
People of these days are confused and they don't know.
Bir insanları görüyorlar. Bunlar ihlaslı diye onlara itibar ediyorlar.
And people can't see things clearly, and they are misguided by wrong people, and they look at people and they think of those people to be sincere ones.
Ondan sonra bakıyor ihlaslı mıdır değil midir? Yani şimdi ahir zamanda yaşıyoruz. Her taraf değişik.
And then they follow those people who then turn out to be in fact not sincere.
Yani gördüğün şey hakikati değişiktir.
We now live in the end of times, and this end of times is characterized by the fact that things are in their essence not the way they appear.
Esas o değil.
Things appear differently than they are in reality.
Esas olan başka şeydir.
The essence and the truth behind things is different to how it appears.
Onun için sen kendine bak.
Therefore, don't look at others, but focus and concentrate on yourself.
Başkalarının şeylerine bakmaya gerek yok.
No need to look at what others do.
Bütün dünya, yani sırf burası için demiyoruz.
And this does not only apply to this place here. This applies to the whole world.
Bütün dünya için insanlar heyecanlanıyor. Yok şöyle oldu, yok böyle oldu diye.
People are throughout the entire world. They let themselves be influenced by the people around them, by the events around them, by their environment around them.
Ona gerek yok.
But there's no need to let oneself be influenced by what happens around you.
Sen kendini muhafaza et.
Just protect yourself.
En mühim şey odur.
That is now the most important thing.
Günleri bunlara Peygamberimiz sallallahu aleyhi ve sellem haber vermiş, söylemiş.
We now live in the end of times, which our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, has informed us about.
Bütün evliyalar, alimler de söylemiş.
And this is also what is being taught by all awliya and by all scholars.
Şeyh Nazım Hazretleri de söylemişti bu şeyleri.
And this is also what Mawlana Shaykh Nazim taught us and told us about.
Bir de tembih etmişti. Kimden olacaksınız, kimden uzak duracaksınız diye.
And Mawlana Shaykh Nazim advised us that we must be careful and cautious with who we are.
Tembih yapmıştı.
And Mawlana Shaykh Nazim thus warned us about who to be with and who to not be with.
Onu dinleyen, ona itaat eden ihlasını korur.
And those who listen to that advice and that recommendation will win, and they will manage to preserve their sincerity.
Öteki türlü çünkü bir gün böyle, bir gün öyle tersine olan hadiseler var.
Because there are events and people who are this way today, and tomorrow things or those people are different.
Şaşırıp kalır.
And then you will be surprised. And then
Allah'a şükür bizim yol güzel yoldur.
we are thankful to Allah Almighty that our path is a beautiful and clear and transparent way.
O yolda devam ediyoruz. Gösterilen yolda devam ediyoruz.
And we continue to follow the way as it was shown.
Bu yol Allah'ın izniyle sonu selamettir.
This way will lead you to peace in the end.
Başkalarına eziyet vermeden, başkalarına
And this way will lead you to peace without making anyone else suffer and without tormenting anyone else.
Kötülük yapmadan Allah'ın izniyle herkese hayır olacak.
And this way will lead everyone to peace, peacefully, and this way will lead everyone to peace, with everyone benefiting and taking profit from this way and without tormenting or harming anyone.
Fayda olacak. Biz beklediğimiz
This way is to the benefit of everyone.
inşallah sahibi zaman sahibi Mehdi Aleyhisselam'dır.
And the one who we await will come. Sayyidina Mahdi alayhi salam is the one who we await.
Ondan başkasına itibar etmek gerekmez.
And there's no need to show respect or reverence to anyone else.
Onun yolunda olanlara itibar edilir.
Follow the ones who are on his way.
Onu kabul etmeyenler kendiler bilir. Onlara da biz karışmayız.
And follow the ones who are on his way and show respect to the ones who are on his way. And those who do not accept and do not obey, we don't interfere with them. It's up to them and they are free to decide what they want to do.
Sen mücevheri bulmuşsan
You found the jewel,
onu muhafaza et.
protect that jewel.
Başkasına akıl vermez.
Don't run the danger of losing that jewel because you want to change others.
Senden kaybedersin ondan sonra. Allah
In the end, you may in fact then lose that jewel. May Allah Almighty protect from that.
muhafaza etsin. Allah sahip zamanı tez zamanda
May Allah Almighty send Mahdi alayhi salam as soon as possible,
göndersin ki çok dünya her bakımdan kötü.
This world in every regard has turned bad,
Daha kötü olmuş. Her zamandan daha kötü.
and it's become worse and worse.
Ama yine şimdi ticaret zamanı dediğimiz, her defa dediğimiz gibi
But now is the time of trade.
ibadetine olan ibadette olan insan kazanır.
It is time to reap rewards for praying and showing obedience, and those who show obedience to the Lord Allah Almighty will be winning.
İbadeti zorluklar da olduğu için daha fazla Allah ecri sevap verir ona.
And Allah Almighty will reward you manifold in these difficult times if you remain steadfast in worshipping Him, Almighty Allah.
Allah hepimize ecri sevabını ziyade etsin inşallah.
The amounts of rewards to be obtained in these difficult times if one worships Allah Almighty are greater than ever.
Allah razı olsun hepinizden.
May Allah Almighty be happy and pleased with you all.
İnsanlara da Allah hidayet versin.
And may Allah Almighty guide humanity.
Allah muhafaza etsin insanları.
And may Allah Almighty protect humanity.
İnsanlar zulüm altında çok insanlar var.
Humanity, many people are under oppression.
Zulüm olunan insanları bir de bazı insanlar öyle atalarımıza geçmişlerimize daha yalan yanlış iftiralar atıp dururlar. Allah onları da ıslah eylesin.
And there's also a different kind of oppression now ongoing, where we see people spreading rumors and lies about our ancestors. May they change and stop spreading such lies and rumors about our ancestors.
Biz onlardan beriyiz.
We have nothing to do with such people who spread lies and rumors about our ancestors.
Çünkü Allah Azze ve Celle'nin azabı o insanlara muhakkak yetişir tevbe etmezseler.
And if they don't ask Allah Almighty for forgiveness, they must know that Allah Almighty's vengeance and wrath is upon them.
Bizden değil Allah'tan vururlar.
We won't do anything. We won't punish them, but they must know that if they don't ask for forgiveness for their lies and their rumors they're spreading, Allah Almighty's punishment is due on them.
Çünkü Allah her şeye kadir olan odur.
Because He, Almighty Allah, is the one who's capable of everything.
O insanlar, iftira eden insanlar kendilerini bir şey zannediyorlar.
He, Almighty Allah, has the power over everything. Those who spread lies and rumors think of themselves to be something,
İki kuruş için insanlara iftira atıyorlar.
and they spread lies for the sake of 2 pennies.
Mahsus Osmanlı padişahları
And they spread lies in particular about the Ottoman sultans.
her birisi bir evliyaydı onların.
But every single Ottoman sultan was an awliya.
Buradan da söyleyelim. Hiç
We,
Allah'ın sevgili kullarıydı.
we declare this from here, that every single sultan of the Ottomans was an awliya and was a beloved servant of Allah Almighty.
Onlara iftira atan onların günahına giren muhakkak cezasını bulur.
Those who spread lies and rumors and speak ill of the Ottoman sultans, they will be held accountable, and they have violated the rights of those great ancestors, and they will be punished if they don't ask Allah Almighty for forgiveness.
Onun için hani bu Allah'a şükür burada her taraftan yayılıyor bu.
And may this declaration be spread everywhere through these channels and means.
Tevbe ederse tevbe kapısı açıktır.
The door of repentance is open, and they may ask Allah Almighty for forgiveness for their rumors and the lies they have been spreading.
Tevbe etmezse kendi bilir.
But if they don't ask for forgiveness, then it's up to them, and they must accept what will await them.
Biz Allah Azze ve Celle'nin söylediğini, Peygamber sallallahu aleyhi ve sellem söylediğini ki iftira eden cezasını bulur. Bizden değil, Allah'tan bulur.
And this is what Allah Almighty, what our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, that those who spread lies and rumors, they will be punished by Allah Almighty.
Onda yani bizim topumuz, tüfeğimiz yok.
There is no need for us. We don't have weapons or cannons or anything.
Allah var.
But there is Allah Almighty.
Allah da onlara ya hidayet verir ya ceza verir.
And Allah Almighty will either guide them or He will punish them.
Allah muhafaza etsin.
May Allah Almighty protect us.
İnsanlar nasihat kabul ederse kurtulur.
And if people accept good words and good advices, these good pieces of words, they may be saved.
Nasihat kabul etmeyen pişman olur.
But those who reject these good words, advices, they will regret.
Allah nasihatı kabul edenlerden eylesin.
May Allah Almighty make us become those who accept good advice.
Ve Allah tevfik el Fatiha.